Good morning, Katrina.
Good morning.
We can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Maybe it is our side.
Let me check on.
We can hear the Katina.
Okay, can you try again?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you so much. Thank you. And Gala Rinpoche, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us? Hello?
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay, we can hear you as well. Good morning.
Morning.
We can't
sonda.
또 delay. 야복 생기도게.
야보 거기도.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Gala Rinpoche, we're still seeing the title slide, not the camera. Okay. Very nice. Thank you.
Tashilale Gen Rinpoche. Thank you for continuing to teach us on this text. And good morning, Katrina Brooks. We're very fortunate to have you as our translator. And welcome to everyone online. We're happy that you can join us this morning. Just a note before we start that next Saturday, the 10th, is Losar, or the Lunar New Year. And so we will not have class next Saturday, but we will resume the following Saturday, the 17th, at the same time. So we'll begin with some preliminary prayers, and you'll find a link to these in the chat box. To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one thus gone, the foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, nor the world's supreme guide to beings to be tamed. teacher of gods and humans, to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you are born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme science, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms, unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings, the holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop, a dew, a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the four faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewed Mount Meru, o'er land, sun, and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niyatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Oh yeah, this song again.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, they are Geshe Thabkhe song le. Deba tuma rabgun cheba is. Tuwa namjin dingi pember six. Deba tuma rabgun cheba is. Tuwa namjin dingi pember six. Dini tsemi kewe tso namjin desho telanya to tobar chi is. Chi song bata rawa. Tuwa sanji chumdede namjin sigara. Dini dambu chanchu choto tuki. Simchen tamje tungwe chende ta dewa lamgo ndoye. Jamba da nyingji la shi song ne. 대다 탐제 줍네베 연구세 연대 군대지 강사신도 6월 4년에 두 개반에 송대에서라 내 개반 망부봐도 셴동에도 제다 셴대와는 거에 치도 수남대 시기 처라 매번 새벽 수송 거라 개발도 말하고 제봐야 동안남 비스 니니 뱀버스에서 잠바다 심제 동에도 전도기 닝지다 대와는 거도 잠배 싸워전기 대다 주위에 제도 라니 교육에서 연대 군대지 기부시도 6월 4년에 샘기반디니 송거라 저는 개발도 말하고 제가 동안남 비니 뱀버스에서 심지어 라다 셴 탐젤이야 펜베 탑초도 주바 강의 냠도 개발망부 투삼시네 제반 제베 내가 나다 잠바다 닝지리 싸워전기 장주비 심랄 자네 뒤에 저바 바로 좀 줄어서 발로반디 아니 펜베 초도 주바 시버레서 거라 동안남 진디니 펜버시스 제 디니 이제니 펜베 초도 주바 임베 tonda 가르스나 동안남 진디니 펜버시 디니 체메 계획 소남지 대쇼 될랑에도 토버시스 디네세로 잠바다 세월의 시체베 장주비 심 심베코네 저바 바로 침바줄라 로반디니 송거라 세메베 장메바로 기부충은 라 두데 디니 체메 계획 소남지 대쇼 될랑에도 토버시스 세메베 계획 참마 탐제게 대화 내가 뭐도다 내래 타르와다 탐제 켐발서 봐 대회 초도 줄바 탐제 아니 장주 심지 싸워 제발 때네 도그래 송거라 얘네 세메 기회 소남지 대셔 될라니도 도버치 어야 이치잖아
No. So, as the Master Shantideva has said, the Lord of Sages, who have been contemplating for many eons, have seen this alone as a blessing by which joy is easily increased and immeasurable multitudes of beings are rescued. So here, as this verse said, the lords of sages, those Buddhas who, having for many eons sort of contemplated what is most beneficial, they themselves gave rise first to this attitude of supreme bodhicitta that has as its root kind of compassion for all sentient beings, wanting to free them from their sufferings and wishing to bring about their happiness. And so that kind of attitude that wants to bring forth all sentient beings from the sufferings of samsara then has as its aim this goal to thinking, I will become a Buddha, one who has eliminated all faults and generated all good qualities in order to be able to benefit these beings. And so they have seen in their practice of eons that this kind of attitude, this supreme mind of awakening with love and compassion as its root, this wish to free others from cyclic existence, this is what will bring about the kind of supreme happiness for both oneself and other sentient beings. And so again, having sort of these Buddhas have themselves engaged, first having given rise to that mind of awakening, then held with that, they engage in the six perfections and so forth, finally coming about to that state of Buddhahood. And so they have seen that this mind, this very mind of awakening, this mind of bodhicitta, is, as it says, alone a blessing by which joy is easily increased and immeasurable multitudes of beings are rescued. So this kind of attitude is what the most supremely beneficial that one could generate, bringing about countless, immeasurable multitudes of sentient beings, bringing about both their temporary and ultimate highest happiness. And so seeing thus the benefit of this, the lords of sages or the Buddhas have praised this attitude of bodhicitta.
어야 전에 대셔 될라니도 도버치 싫어 사비한테 버려서 거라 아니 저와초도 줄바 간데간데 토버치 그랬으나 이와 기부 총무값소 담부야 알로 장한테 기부 총무값소 아니 교환에 교화 바로 마셔봐 최주배 때 개발센터 도에 제도 이와 교환에 제도 내손도 기회 주미가 주 샬라 차와봐 아니 연주 계지기 요 세와방에 된도서 개화초 주발을 써봤다 하시거라 Any given drinking cups of low chambana, Rani, Koya Tunge, your Toma Mevana, Tadaban, your Maban, and your you are the Tamje, or Shiva, Sivora, Sibetunge, Mabuyon de somewhat of the Pashini, Mevasoya to Dallas or even drinking cups of low chanditi changiora, or till low chambana, Sibetunge Jada Mabu, Rangi. Rangi Joe, to make a drum of shooting you local escort. Any you chamber cups of Lo Chambana, Rajibo, Koyatongele Tauras and Maimba. And then Simje Tamje, the way show. And then Gondo Tamikova duty, Harvata, Tamje Kimbe Quartia, Goversheba Telesgordo. Oh, there's some Tamje, our young set Canadian Gresena. 네 장주고 쌤 공부할 때네 연구를 해서 거라. 오야.
So here, as it says in this verse, this kind of this attitude is seen alone as a blessing by which this kind of supreme joy is generated. So it's like a seed of that, this attitude of bodhicitta, beginning with the kind of attitude or the sort of trainings that we engage in of the mind on the being of small scope. We recognize that in order to pursue this path, one needs to gain a good rebirth, have a higher rebirth, lifetime after lifetime, in order to continue to train. And so to gain that kind of support of a good rebirth, one gives up harming others, abandons all forms of harm, and engages in the kind of 10 virtuous actions and so forth in order to ensure such a rebirth. But then the training of the being of middling scope, one sees that we have experienced in the past countless sufferings within cyclic existence, and we will continue to experience countless sufferings in the future. And so wishing to get rid of all of that suffering, to pacify that suffering for ourselves, one trains the mind in trying to eliminate the kind of root of that suffering. But then there is the attitude of a bodhisattva, of not just thinking of one's own freedom alone, but wanting to place all sentient beings as well in higher rebirths in order that they might pursue this highest happiness. And so all of these have as their root, their foundation, or the seed, this attitude of bodhicitta, of wishing to benefit other sentient beings.
Oh yeah. Oh, there's a Jambana Nijili Shison, Zawasone, Janjuga Sim, Yeni Chiba Paris in Patrol, Love and this Vision Gordo. And then people Gondola Mikovada, and then Ele Tarbata, Tamje Kimbe Koma, Kande, they were short to give a condition to win that, doesn't delete any top to this. T and then Simjanam La Pembe showed you around the Shantamjelia, Pembe showed you by Imba. Sigvares Sungudwa. Oh, T Wamatilia, Dinago Shinjuka Sungudwa. Yabatumara, which was one of the Pembas, didn't send me give us on the Jotilan to us. The Jotilan to it. Sibetum at Yadasham dishes. You would drink it to you. Simjam Medessa or Devatans, you would chamber Sierra. The my Jata Chevan Deve chance. Like it, Yama Bungadungela Sobe. Taratamjim bet Dewa Mambo. To one Deveja, the Chanju Simita to Tamechas. Chanju Choto, Jambata, Nijili, Shisone. Chanju Choto Semkebati, Magiba Kibarche. Give a mania baches at town mechas, the Yamban mechas. Only going to pay at the bear who is on good. Oh, yeah.
So again, this kind of attitude of bodhicitta is the basis for all of those kinds of good results. So bodhicitta, which has as its foundation, as its root, love and compassion, those kinds of goals can be achieved on the basis of this attitude, that of the small scope, middling scope, as well as the great scope. So here, continuing in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, Shantideva says, those who long to overcome the abundant miseries of mundane existence, those who wish to dispel the adversities of sentient beings, and those who yearn to experience a myriad of joys should never forsake the spirit of awakening. So those who long to overcome the abundant miseries of mundane existence, this is referring to those who are practicing the middling scope of wanting to achieve their own freedom. And those who wish to dispel the adversities of sentient beings is referring to those who have this attitude of bodhicitta. It is on this basis of bodhicitta that those kinds of results can be achieved. This sort of attitude, again, that has as its foundation love and compassion. And so it says, those who want those kinds of results should never forsake the spirit of awakening, as in one should strive to generate this attitude of bodhicitta, make effort so that it does not decline, but increases more and more.
Oh yeah. Geshe Chanju semba to Julia, Chimba Longe Chona, Malati Nor Shambura Chichi Koyase, Longe Chonsona, Ngarazu Rajini Kera, Chalati, Yahudu Desena, Dennis Shedura, Young Kur Medu Samsa Tangira, Chanju semba to the Kadachi Viore. There is a Tangi Kul Kugab Pendochi, Kugabchi, Topson Sam Gavara, Kulakangi, you would say, Kugabchi Topson Sam the Kawayong Vichera. When I try to but to Yando the Ranje to Zubi, Kalemambu capture Tarwa Topsona, Aquala Cormeguge, Leda Numubu, Rawame, but Kichime, but Atiringa Tarvatosos, and Yamosama Pansari, Samsona, Kawaseme by Chigresera, Kawajigger, but Akiwa Tomaba net and dress college to Manyade, Mahobana, Yon Juris, the Yomogo Chasara. But they Kawatele Jalawa. Chanju Sembalia, Shangi Tanchero, Chimbachinda, Robachida, Sengachi Chonsona, tried to tell us something. Tele Lava Kawaki Yusora. Chidder Chinji, Chida Tosam Lesoda. Chidder Kazachi, Malati, Chimbatarochi, Robachirochi, Sengach Mosona Sora. Geshe Tinjons, Geshe Chanju Sembato, the one jungle, Kangi Sokumaris. There are two now last. To what you can do the Rangegi. Rajumba, Yamoto Sungara. Chida to some like a set into the Dartumna. She would shoot with the watching, the Vachiminas. She would Tarba Tobagi. Capsuine, Kawachuma, Tileja, Hagbet, and it, Dendumeva, and Gudisungara. She would shoot with the Vachimina. Tamjet, our touching biscuit. So little Julius of what Tamjet, Chimbata, and the Pendoches of Chuna. The Veja, and a Kawachema, Chigrisungara. What you doing on it and then Haranzo Kalakabu is so good, the thing as low Machaza, Kalakabu so good. Lo Changba in a Chanju Sebasede, Kawacheban Duma, Kawacheban Duane, Kalakawa, gave a moment in the Kalakap on the Samna, Yomarwa, Kashe Troshetone. Shangi to the Rangaton Sungura. Haranzo Rangaton that to Kalakamarwa. In the Chanju Sebatozobe. Rangatonda le lagwa Shangitonda Sigwada, Shangitonda the Rangatonda Neshigora, or the Indico Kayong Maresumda, or a teacher.
So here right now where we are at, we might think, oh, this is quite difficult, like to have to engage in these kinds of practices for countless eons. I don't know how that could sort of be possible. Like I've got to achieve the aims of all sentient beings for countless eons. Where we are at right now, that might seem like, gosh, that is so difficult. Like, I don't know that I can even accomplish the aims of 5 or 6 other beings. Like that's difficult for me. So how is that going to come about? But this is only because we have not actually trained our minds. If we habituate our mind to this attitude of bodhicitta, if we train again and again, we will actually get to that kind of place as bodhisattvas are, where it's not difficult to work for the benefit of others, but it's something that brings them joy, actually. So bodhisattvas, because they have really developed this sort of attitude of exchanging self for other, they experience joy when they have the opportunity to be of benefit to others. So, for example, if a beggar were to come about and to like ask for our most prized possession, where we are at now, that would seem like, oh, that's kind of difficult. I'm not sure if I'm ready to part with that. Whereas for a bodhisattva, when they see something like this, they feel a great deal of joy because they have this opportunity to benefit other sentient beings. So, as Chandrakirti has said in his entry to the Middle Way, describing the kind of like bodhisattvas, upon having the opportunity to help other sentient beings, they feel this great joy that is greater than the kind of joy that even a Shravaka or a Pratyeka Buddha, I mean, imagine a Shravaka or a Pratyeka Buddha who has achieved their own liberation has a kind of immeasurable joy. They're in this peace of nirvana. They no longer have to experience all of those sufferings of samsara. And it's a great kind of joy that they feel. But the joy of a bodhisattva at just thinking about helping others or having that opportunity is said to be even greater than that. So here, Chandrakirti says, if simply hearing or thinking of the phrase, give me, brings such joy to the children of the conqueror, joy not experienced even by the arhats who enter into peace, what need is there to speak of the joy when giving away everything? So for bodhisattvas, there's not like a difficulty, a trouble, like, oh, I have to do this, but there's a great joy in being able to benefit others, a greater joy even than that experienced by, say, arhats. So what need to speak of the kind of joy that they feel in actually being able to give everything away? And so right now we might think that this is hard, but if we actually train our minds, it's possible to go from that sort of feeling as though like, oh man, all these countless eons of having to like drag myself through helping others. It's not that way. When we really have trained our mind and actually developed a genuine attitude of bodhicitta, being able to benefit others is something that brings a great deal of joy.
Oh yeah. ngarazo lo changi wa maro mato chambata nyeji da chwa meta wa sa do o tende kumgi na pechana sumbana shi tambu ne chwa meta wa kom kyo chima yesa to zo samluta ta kyo sang bu che lang go sam jala chawa pa kyo tu ya ta tende ya lo rim ji chang go wa da ngarazo lo changi wa maro tende te so na no sam sha sha ma to nam ju samluta ge wa mara samluta na ngarazo le la do ya yora dengue ma katambe kishi foto alia to chuse gasha to chuse to chuse ne digra katambe kishi foto alia michige to chuse ge michige tama naro na chue naro na shiwete ne tele kishi foto a karason resena kyoji choa meta ba mangdo komda ase de chinge be lo shi kesona ne tikba po ala kajume ba chi yo kyo truba la kajume ba chi on ge so 대된도 장바다 닝지 남준에 야부 겁나 쓰거라 대된도 장바다 닝지 인도 검시다세 이 교례께서는 심전기 되지벌라 까규메 바정게 소래 어디 인도 가라져 로창나 장기 어마르마도 딩가줄게 깨투에시 마르산페 유샤로 르탄셔라 당분에 소소소소리아 가서로 통주체서라 미지기 계란 된중그 마르선에 가서 건두사라 이내 소소소송에 연구마를 삼 당일라 예벨레로 세더라 거기에도 연구마를 또 승계명님의 미주 근데 삼로타야를 모두 가서 요요 말을 삼삼 유샤로 맞아 소소 매주 지금은 어때 연구를 해서 거도 어떻게나
So, other than not having trained our minds, really, this is just a matter of working with our own mind. If we think of, say, love and compassion, death and impermanence, we can really work on our minds. We will actually change our sort of ways of thinking. But this requires us really contemplating these, integrating them into our minds. Like we often hear these teachings. We think, oh, yeah, death and impermanence or bodhicitta, we think about it and we're like, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. And we sort of accept it at that level. But without really contemplating it deeply, we're not going to be benefited by that. So there is a story about the great Kadampa master Potawa, who was giving teachings. A student had asked him, I think his name was Tocha, about what kind of instructions you should really take to practice. And Potawa says to him, you should think more about death and impermanence. If you really meditate on death and impermanence till you have a feeling about that, there's no difficulty in giving up non-virtuous activities. And if you train your mind in love and compassion, if you really think about love and compassion deeply, then there's no difficulty in working for the aims of others. So we should think in this way that we have the ability to train our minds. It's just a matter of actually doing that. We shouldn't dismiss this from the start, thinking like, I don't think that's something that I could do. Like, oh, that's something that people did way back in the past, but like, I don't know if we are able to do this. So we engage in this way in a kind of self-deprecation, where if someone else were to come along and tell us like, oh, you can't do that, we get angry. We're like, no, of course I can do this. But we often tell ourselves, oh, no, we can't do this. I'm not able to do this, and engage in that kind of self-deprecation. So here, we shouldn't think that way, but should actually recognize that it's only a matter of putting in the training. We have the ability to generate these realizations.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, ti indu tangara to samlata de ro. Chiwa metaba ne che samlata de. Oh, ti ngara to samlana la ra tangjin yo ra. Tanda na she ti ta to tenge yin samsara ji samlu do wa. Ka di ina dus te in be samlu shima do. Tanda keji sokun juwa do yo re sen do do yo samsa. Chiwa metaba samlu ko yo mara. Mechen dile endu tenge so de samlu shuk chimbu skor tangjin. Ani tina be de tada nyen da che mambu so che rawa shan le trato che da so kale se mele kale se ngarazu samlu tindre shira mechen de ko shira tige mare sam lo ya lenge che ne lo chingni che che kashe lo ngap chu se te yer ka che na tindre jire sam tish ke sam ji ke chimbu ma chi shira ina ke chimbu ma chi se de lega che de tunda lega che go mare se de se go mara rawa de che ore de Ranti nyen kyun sosu tanda chunju chik tanda liya. Chato dan drensim dan nga ye dan chato dan nga zu dan kyunzu si nga zu chu terwa. Sosu mi jib so dwa. Miye mi jib so. Pa tsawa chane tsu tsawa chishu singe sundu zi labgi ora tanda. Tatin sa di haku dwa kazo. Nima peche na sere tembar hiji. Kiran di se ku ma re se ko. Kuran shindunge jare nga razu kanga di shindunge jare tosi deche. 이 메시지 야고지 소초네 야고라 김자이나 롱바이나 제치 로보라세 얘네 야고지 소초네 야고라 고시에데시 도로 세고 마레세 계란님아 가시 녜리아세 이제 이또다게 마르티 파오 마르체라 tinsan 파오 지그라 미세데 파오 마레 미소 쩌비야다 님도 전부 탐제 돈다 삼을돈다 티 파오레세라 예세 찬주세발 파오성도 찬주세바 세바 첨부오세 어디엔디 가소라 하차와치데 그래서 중국 숨통도 와 일단 밤 속에 세워라 저라 이 속에 세워라 파쇼에서도 견주 수쇼에 tradi치아 세워라 행에게 tradi치기도 견주 tradi치아 세 파쇼에서 수쇼쇼아세 단다 데려와 파세겐스도 제마야 수세쇼아세 단다르지레도 어디 인디 가서라 처음에 다 봤을 때이 돈도 저리 이런 가데 야고지 되세요라 지질에 처음 마셔서 지질 뱀버 좀 처음 마실 때는 가가 지우라 메시지 줘도라 어디 멤버제 당가라서 투쇼 소소 메지스 메지스 룽바 메지와서 라 어딘데 처음에 다바데 양에 삼을다니 신디치부터 달때 겨 이거 잡지 부사가면서 라 아니 심지어 탐지가 된도 림베 심지어 탐지가 된 줍통게지 와 그래서 연대 군대기 산제지 고반지 토바시기 인삼 단단의 심지어를 지내기 인지권 와 동의와시 통나 인지권 인지권스도 때 마부들을 삼로 끝당도 뒤마로 술에 동해 마요 쇼시기 와라 전부이나 동해 매고라 열에 싸와시고라 아 콜도 우마주네 야보래서 야구 좋네 대화 좋네 야보래 삼사 피팅게 와라마도 그 중조럽시야 니지 검시도 묻지대 마하르 소소 토안데 근데 삼고티 마라 어디 가서 그래 심지어 탐지에 동해에 저하다 대화던 덴바 소수문에 가는데 시체투가 제고 그래 삼 근데 제tumgengi ngwenje sanje na shinge chanju simbe lapse to rim lapse 심지어 탐지에 더 좁통게 깨고서 연대 군대 기부시던 기와 작은 인삼 예체도 안에 담배치 년기 인삼 태바다 삼바 공배름 지적인 인삼 최선배 꿀로치네 센쇼서 어디치 됐어 마운드도 쳤어
So here, if we think more about death and impermanence, we will help to counteract that kind of sense of permanence that we normally have. Like we don't have this sense that we are, say, changing moment to moment, disintegrating moment to moment. We don't think about that. We have the sense that like, oh, I'm stable. I'm going to be here for a while. And because we have that kind of sense of permanence or stability, we tend to get into these things where we're holding on to our side and creating enemies, protecting our side, getting in fights, accumulating all kinds of negative karma. And so, however, much we're thinking just about this life and the affairs of this life, like it's really quite a short period of time. But when we only think about that, we don't think about death and impermanence, then we really get focused on things like, oh, protecting our own side and defeating our enemies. And all that we're doing is making ourselves unhappy and making others unhappy. Like, for example, it's often said that we don't need to kill anyone. They're sort of dead already. Everybody is eventually going to die. We don't need to sort of hasten that along. But yet we sort of think of the kinds of activities that we take on both as individuals and as the world really shows how we get into these kinds of patterns of getting so caught up in this life and trying to protect our side. Like, look at the way that we say make atom bombs. It's like, well, if they're making something, then we need to be ready for that. As if somehow if we were to throw a bomb on someone else, it wouldn't be sort of just for a bomb to come back at us. We don't even think about it like that. So in this short sort of time that we have, if we really contemplate death and impermanence, we'll recognize that we should live well. We should try not to harm others. If we approach them with a kind of love and compassion, we will create happiness among those that we are around, among countries and so forth. But yet, if we do harm, if we are creating harm toward others, we're going to create enemies. We're going to make each other unhappy. And we see the sort of results of that very clearly in this world. So here, if we instead look at the kind of situation that we are in and recognize that, instead of getting caught up in this sort of the affairs of this life, I'm instead going to strive to do as much as I can to not harm others, to be beneficial to others, in order to be able to attain that state of Buddhahood, wherein I've eliminated all faults and attained all good qualities, and thereby I'm truly able to benefit others. And so we begin by training our mind in various things like compassion. And we should see that compassion is not a sort of attitude of looking down on others as if you were above them somehow and it's like, oh, those pitiful beings, but recognizing instead that all sentient beings of any sort of state or status suffer, and it's wishing in a genuine way that they be freed from that suffering, not in a way where you're sort of above or higher than them. But so with that kind of attitude of thinking about death and impermanence, compassion for others, we should think, I'm going to train in stages, as did bodhisattvas of the past, and in this way set our motivation for listening to the Dharma.
Oh yeah, I'm going to do this one. The Dharma, the Dreamawe, about the Dala, and now Tinjula, Jidela, and David, Tanya Tamje de la Roe, Kunzu Tembale Minyamshi, Tashenso Tashida, 땡가서 타게 강도야 말롱에 강라야 응벌 심바 매베시르 전담 템발레자 마냐베 텐제 마와 테네 템바니레 미냠바르 마와 예노세 안디 탄다 다데 케바 버게 케바 셴다 시주 메다 요부터 셰요라 안다 데체 종가 바다 테주 시주 챤이야 데타 퉁게 오마라 이 말에 안다 공도 셰바나시라 kama miki doshi la sobo to sunale de yongora ti shegore andi karsoda medrash karsongore sena tedana tendre ma oma ba teda la ne nawa tinjon la jidele debe namsha tamje roe aside tenje debar joga nawa ngone de karsore sama ngone tondali yebe nawa mare songore ngaranzo chitsonga ba tso ene ya karsore tenje debar joya nawa tenje debar joya kewa de kewa shagoro tenje debar joya gago de gago shagoro tanda keban dozo sonde tenje debar joya kewa side kewa maimba chile sigyo are sungara kewa yena kora rangone sosungone sokke gore se sosungone ke ke yo mare se i medu shenda jige nawa chunalia jigdenba zo nawalia chi ya kewa je nang yong go re sen chuna re se ti sonja ko ka so de chuna cham lia te je de bar jo na wa ti yong go re se wa ta te dang ba la ti ngone chane chen ti kewa dang ga ba ta tu yo ma re sung go ra chi da ne ko tong ba ni se de yu ko ran pa ka sha ya chi sung go re ke be shi chi me da chi wa ra tong ba ni se de kang ga pa ka sha go re se ni chi na yong do ka re se te je de bar jo na wa re te le te ta ya ke o ma re ti chun be na wa re se ko ra ngone ke wa yo na ko bi ne ya te je ko ra ya te yong go ra ko ra ya ke o ma re se go ra shen da ji ya ti chi de ru ru su chu ne na wa de te de ge na wa de chi so ka so ra ta ji den ba so na ya de chu be na wa de se go ra te je de bar jo ke wa sha ga ma re 이게 가서 달래 많이 셀래 매일래 매 주면 뭐 건데 요한남에 요 많이 세티 따게 가서 저기 현다 저거 요 다시 요 개를 저기 땡진 대번이 좋아 송서 산지게 땡진 대번이 좋아 송서기도 그 껴와 신할 만두베 껴와 치샤 그래 땡데 껴와 돼 땡데 껴와 돼 땡데 껴원에 말해서 좀 거라 비타메게 가서 달래 많이 셴래 메셔라 셴기데 야 주셴래 되는 제부 셴기 와들 샤그레 지다 랑은에 투베스 말에 제 종가 봐도 저기나 랑은에 투베 주셴래 되는 제부 셴기 와들 시기 와레세 셴기데 이면에 주셴래 되는 제부 셴기 와서네 텐제다 치버와 텐제데 버리 셴기 니 그게 텐제데 버리 좋아 손서 셴다 다시 껴와시기도 이 손코데 맹게 차요라
No. So here then picking up in the text, and again we have to see that this is the sort of view of those who assert that dependently arisen production is not actual production. And so here picking up on page 66, and I think maybe I didn't read fully what Geshe had gone through last time, or we're just sort of, I think, missing one paragraph. But so here, this is, again, not according with the views of, say, Lama Tsongkhapa. So here, this is based on the views of those who would say that dependent arising, like production through dependent arising, is not real production. Again, for these kinds of schools, they would say that for there to be some kind of actual or real production, that would be referring to some sort of production from its own side. And so these things, which are dependent originations, are only mistaken appearances. The various conventionalities that we see and so forth are merely mistaken or are false. And so here, picking up on page 66, where it says, nevertheless, the Madhyamikas who assert dependent arising do so without falling outside of the two truths. And this is, again, according to these particular schools who are asserting that this sort of dependent arising is not an actual production. Again, as the Buddha has negated the production from the four extremes, as Nagarjuna makes clear, not from, in no sense is anything ever produced, whether from itself, from other, from both, or from without a cause. So for them, if you are saying that the Buddha taught dependent arising that is outside of those four extremes, then this is really referring to something that is not an actual kind of production, but rather is just these false appearances. So here it says, by saying that all mundane and supramundane conventions are feasible in the appearance of dependent arising, they do not fall outside of conventional truths. And because they do not hold to anything by not falling into the four alternatives or the eight alternatives, they do not fall outside of the ultimate truth either. So for them, they would say that the kind of dependent arising that was taught by the Buddha is teaching outside of the four extremes. If one were to accept as, say, like production from other, and when we get into talking about this sort of production from other, this isn't just merely arising from something that is other, but something other from its own side. So to negate that those kinds of four extremes, according to these schools, they would say that that means that all appearances are mere falsities, and that they have dependent arisings are not considered to be actual arising.
Oh yeah, okay, because you can do that. Jidelen deber to bashe. Tungi rangi cheba ta shenje cheda nige che. Tumi togi wayin deuse. Keje tenjen deber song sigdwa. Tungi rangi cheba ta shenje cheba se de kyushen ten debu shen ke wali shag mare songora. Je zonga bato zena. Kyushen ten debu shen ke wasam shana ani keje tenjen deber jung sunga de tunda chibare dora. It is Rangone to be Shisha Sugar, Rangone to be Kyushan and Rebution Kyosunga, Desigora, or Dilichagora, Tashi Kyol Mandi the Kyawade, Tenja Deborah Kyawat Sungua, Tashi is the Shiga Megura, Rangicheva, the Taki, the Yomara, Shangi de Yomar, Shangi said, Kyushan and Rebution Kyawasam Lashana, Chetonga, but the Shizun and Shishana and the Tia, and the Tachibare Dugara. Or the chance of the Shagma Ranguni to the Kushan Likiwa, this water. I kept a shanda so sooner. To me, Rangi of the Shangies and Yigache. To me, talk away as soon as the Fiji Tension Debar Josidi. You shall attend Rebushanki or the Yomare Sigara. It's already in the calculator. Ranguni to us, then the Masini Kayomar. You're not Ranguni to a Yingure, you're not Ranguni to a Yingure. Soon to Shandash and the da. Che tension debar jo so de so se de now tuna get tension decision that tension de ne ji den ba zo ke ge don ga go do ro go do sam thon de yo de se ji jo ka so de tuna che ba sam de ma do ne kyo ma re tension debar jo kyo ye ne kyo ma yi go de se go de o ti ji lam na ta ti ka she yang de ka de na sam ge ki de sam o ti.
So I believe it's from the Praise of the Supramundane, where it says that like logicians assert that our suffering comes from a cause from itself, from another, from both, or from neither. But you, the Buddha, have asserted dependent arising. And so here, the sort of assertion is that the Buddha has asserted in opposition by refuting those four extremes of production from self, other, both, or neither, then instead posits dependent arising. And so here, according to like Tsongkhapa, this is not just positing something like an effect arising from a mere other. That is in accordance with the kind of way that we see things, but rather this is refuting the sort of other that is existent from its own side. So to assert some kind of production from another that has some sort of autonomous or sort of objective existence, that is the kind of production from other that is being refuted in those four extremes. And so here, according to these kinds of assertions by other scholars, we see that according to them, they would say that, well, you've refuted all of the extremes of production, and so therefore you can't posit any actual production, right? This is, for them, they're not making that kind of distinction of something that is like objectively existent being a cause of another, but rather these appearances, these various sort of arising and cessation and all of the appearances that we see are merely mistaken appearances. They have sort of no basis. They're not actually arisen, actually produced, but are rather sort of mere falsities.
가서 군죽 템벌에 매냠세 단다 대주 송에데 슈나 장래 나와 잠에 샤요레 딜레요 군죽 템벌라시라 군죽 템벌세디 전부를 하시는 매배 장을 그래 여봐 많이 매배 장을 거라 군죽 시기도 왔어 이 정가부터 전에 군죽 템벌세디 매배 마로 여고라 나와 나신 템벌 매나 고치 여고요라 야 뒤질라나.
So here then, where it's saying that nevertheless, the Madhyamakas who would assert dependent arising do so without falling outside of the two truths. By saying that all mundane and supramundane conventions are feasible in the appearance of dependent arising, they do not fall outside conventional truth. So here, according to these schools, these are merely mistaken sort of appearances, are mere falsities. And so this is the way in which they uphold kind of conventional truth, is that these are not actually produced, but are mere sort of false appearances.
마와다 우마바 이남 셰나스 어떤데 오늘 텐데 템바니레 미냠바르 마와데 우마바 레베스 우마바 텐데 켈레 그레베스 나송고라 미냠바르 마와 테이르 우마바 이남 셰나스 텐데 우마바 마레스 오나 우마바게 텐지 데바는 조아데 템바니레 미냠바르에세 The Kelly Grisson, Umabal Kelly Omar, the Tandam Sebekos, Kaya Melesung get under Umabal the Kelly Maresevera. Then they tended to Banili Majamba, Langi to Umaba East, the Sung Maresivera, Sungor, on it tended Tembanil Minambar Mawata, Tenji Debar Joala, Tembani Yamari, Tenji Debar Joatile, now a conquer Rungris to Ben nowadays, when they home had it. You shall agree, Scoran to Jitem Benang Sulit, the Chivar, etc. Oh, then a shangy, Fune, Tenjo at Tagba some less. This Shandagi, Tenjo at the Kelling, Grace, Rebea, Pune, Consu Samletan, the De Labio, mother. Tenjo, Corazzo, and the Kelling, you Labio, Maresungura. Then a shangy, Rebea, Pune, the Kellang, good esse. Tenjo at Tagba some less, Tenjo as a Tagba some remado. Tenjo Rani Jeter Mawabonam, Tenjo Kelambo Maino. This and Tenjo ala Kelly Mebatro, them service. Umaba get in the Kelling, the Kelling get the Umaba in the La Umares in Angarazo Pazo. It's a shade until Labio Resigora. Yeah, teach them.
So here then it says, are those who assert dependent arising without falling outside the two truths really Madhyamakas? And so for them, again, these schools would assert that they are able to assert dependent arising without falling outside of the two truths of Madhyamakas by saying that these are merely false appearances. Conventionalities are mere false appearances, but aren't actually produced. And so that's the way in which they sort of stay outside of that. And then the response is, so they are prasangika madhyamakas only for others who give arguments and merely label them prasangika madhyamakas. So here they're basically saying that prasangika means that they're not making any sort of assertions. They don't call themselves that. Prasangika madhyamakas themselves do not assert that such proponents are prasangika madhyamakas. Again, from this perspective, they're looking at this as a label that implies that they don't have any sort of assertions or make any kind of positive assertions.
Oh yeah. Ona choje tela umaba shebe she cheba chishena se. Kera tanda labde umaba ge tende labgere sigidwa. Ika resna sigora. Ona choje tela umaba tende tembanyile menyaba labgere se umaba se labsonga se. Choje tela umaba she cheba chishena tene chota chokap jebe chedo choje tera dujin dogbe te cheso cheba mato se tetabi chebe hote keran tanda ngani keche shedo cheba chedo sa keran umaba se labde do ase te sonja nge umaba se teda tumba shene keche chishe ko da labre mato te umaba une umaba tende khele yo mare se kora ila umaba sheba chishena cheda chokap jebe kapche tanda pa keje shisha ura tedu lagbe se chege terin dujin dogbe se umaba yesin degdo ase te cheso cheba mado se keran ta timba chenge ti lagbe mado tetabe chebe mesebe cheba da tetabe cheba mesebe kablia cheba mebe kablia ngara rang khele ne shi chigene ta umaba o she masam je cheba da jawa yin la ase kamna ta umaba she masam gichute sambada chebe yule deba rese umaba yensi lagmare chebe kab nido ya masam gicheba da traya chebe kabla masam gicheba da traya de kheli yo marde inaya tedar cheba nawane nge labgutu shi labde gorati melona chejin sunye na shi tanye na shi rese nawane shi ada marese tesongora o techilamna ro chilamna tere.
So here, then it brings up the qualm. Well, why do you refer to them as madhyamakas? So here again, it's making this sort of, well, why are you using this particular reference to them as madhyamakas? It says, in order to have an opportunity to debate with you, I conform to your term because you want to use it. Again, they wouldn't make this sort of assertion and say, I am a madhyamaka, or again, they're saying that there isn't really any sort of assertions to be made. But in order to have an opportunity to debate with you, I conform to your term because you want to use it. Once I have left the debate and am not under its pressure, I would never think or say, I am a madhyamaka. So here it's only that to accord with the person with whom they are debating that they use this term or try to make that kind of assertion. However, even during the debate, I do not think of or use such an expression, even though it appears that I am doing so. This is just like an echo. So in accordance with their kinds of assertions, they would say that these it's really beyond sort of expression or thought, but in the course of debate, they use these sorts of terms, although they are like an echo, like the reflection of a face in a mirror, not really existent.
Oh yeah. Mibam Drambuche Songudwa, Mibam Drambuche Danda, Ningme Kedupchimbuchera, or Congress from one nation, Nimaki, Sonju Nation Shed, Congress Sonju Nation Shegora. Dinner Cabashangi, Sonju Madame Dandos, Yetila Biora. Mibam Drambuche, umaba tabu ni rigbe machebe ngari yoba shilase umaba cheba chene ni pa kagi orba tale mai shelme ni kebe mai sero tani gaba me kewa me wa me droa me sera de pa kagi ora ti kaye tesi ora sungu ora niba rambuche umaba tabu rigbe machebe ngari yoba shilase rigbe cheba machebe kabla yoba shi rigbe cheba chene mebe so shabatinde mare sungu ora 당분에 고라 매버를 해서 거라. 당분 여가 제 르베 제바 전에 봐 매버서 샤트데 말해서 고라 실을 당분에 매매를 해서 거라. 이번은 무시 분바다 르베 마세베 안가리 여바 실라. 다다 르베 제베 토에 분바 좀 바다를 따라면서 토하기 분발이 신 분바 짜서는 땅에 열었다 매버샤라 때나시 말해서라. 매싱식 바다를 동바를 송와시 이나세 매게 싱디 당부 여바셔네 매 ям소나 섹소나네 싱디 매바셔라 근데 말으셔라 당분에 매를 실을 매바실이야 매방어 주치기 얼마도 여바치 니 매바소요 말으셔라 신색 바다를 동바를 송화시이나 동니시베 제수 공부로라 세월 난도 매바함 난 매세장 이 매바차위에 진짜에는 동반이 시차소나 분부 통에 매바 차고라 야 나데라 니만나 시 통데라 이 통에 분부 좀 번에 시네 되게 당부 예바시 매바 소사네 다 통에 매바 차고라 이 당다 나데도 와서라 이 말에서 매래 얘나 나데데 추베 나와서 나기어레 송거라 돈이 가서 시베 제속라냐 분부 로라 세와라 나도 매바 나 메시장세 매버서 살았다 그 통에 요 말아 되게 본부 토에 좀 난다 되게 본부 요랬다 통에 요 말아 그 통에 맞지 내시린 거래서 대다른 많이 배 동신도 나와다 낭신도 동바시고 봐서 동바래 당분이네 실에 매버래 얘는 알아서 주나진이 지 통에 요래서 동신도 나겨래 나와 내신에 요래서 낭신도 동바래 나와 내신에 동리요 말아 계속 자꾸 규모다 보시기도 실에 매버시 통대서 규모다 보세요. 그만 가시 소나 동가 받으나 실에 매버시 통한들 규모씩 말해서 나와 나시 매버시리아 규모씩을 말도 나와는 매버시리아 나한테 붙을 씩 말해서 어디 소주도 와야 되지 나
So, here again, we are going through the kind of assertions of other scholars. So next, according to Mipam Rinpoche, who is a great master and scholar of the Nyingma tradition, he says that it is not the case that a picture, for instance, exists before it is analyzed with reasons and then becomes empty when subjected to analysis, as if it were destroyed by a hammer or burned in a fire like wood. So here, when Madhyamikas engage in the kind of refutation of production from the four extremes, or those 8 extremes of coming and going and so forth, it isn't the case that there is something that is existent that is sort of destroyed in the course of that refutation. Like in the course of analysis, as like if you were to break a pitcher with a hammer, it becomes non-existent. Or if you burn wood in fire, you no longer have that wood. So it isn't the case that somehow the course of analysis leads to the destruction of that thing, but rather there's something that's non-existent from the beginning, and you're being introduced to that non-existence. So it's not like once you've realized emptiness, if it were the case that analysis, the refutation that one engages in through analysis, were to destroy something that were existent, then you wouldn't be able to say see anything after that. So if this were so, then after you realized emptiness, there would be no picture to appear to one's mind, or it would not be capable of appearing to your mind. So if it were the case that our refutation through analysis destroyed something, then once you realized emptiness, then you can't have the appearances of these various things. But it isn't the case, however, that this analysis sort of destroys something. But through that analysis, you come to realize that that base is totally non-existent, that these are totally mistaken appearances. So here, this kind of assertion, it continues, rather, you must understand that a pitcher appears while being empty and is empty while appearing. So, according to the assertions of Mipam Rinpoche, it's not as though there's any even existent basis, but rather this is the way they employ the kind of example of an illusion. There's something that doesn't have any sort of existing base, but yet is a mistaken appearance. It arises. Now, here, according to other scholars like Gelama Tsongkhapa, it's not, the example of an illusion is not given to assert that the base upon which it arises is non-existent, but rather to show that things appear in one way that they don't actually exist in that way.
Oh yeah. Achu dedala tene kewa kindi chumbe ki jansu Kewa kindi chumbe se ngazu yebe kable yore pele ya tidu yore yebe keba chisa. Chu dedala tene kewa kindi chumbe ki jansu. Ripe chena tambu ne kuma tabi tende surto 마체와르 리시기 나와 탐제 가고요 장사 당부파 강가 가야 레셔라 아테 정가 바다 저네 당부 가창은 징구르시라 로서 수메스 수 가야 마레세 수 가야 가자디 수 랑웨네 트바드 가고레 수 자와네 가고 마레세 수 요레 타요레 kumbunga 요레 가사 요레 송고라 전담을 제베서 가르가고르시 강사 가고요 말에 수 가고마 랑웨네 랑신게 동반 남바 양다고 제수 따오세 랑신게 동바 랑웨네 트베 동바 와 양담바 트베 동바세 디가고르 마데 코나 가고마 그냥 지대게 타녀게 왕게인지 양담바는 많이 넣으세 하나시 도나 송바나시 근데 랑와도 트바스 그래서 딸도 송아 다음에서 대 랑와도 트바 타녀게 왕게 샤고 많이 바 코란수 트비야 지요나 랑와도 트바스 어디 가고요 마도 지단 수가위오 말해서 거라 이 송주다 메라레 근데 당부 공도 시에부터 찍어버려 당부파 강가 가산데에서 거라 다시시 다신게티 요네 풍붕하다 가봐요 따든세 매장 따다 민도 삼바 최탐제 매화 공샤고 그래서 거라 공샤나 동바샹야 공샤네 야지 동대거 매신도 남기도 삼사 그만다고 그래 삼바네 이 되게서 거라. 당부 강가 가산 되게서. 준 대달할 때는 개화 컨디션 배제자. 리베 제나 당부네 규마다비 텐데 슈도 텐데 수르도 마셔와르. 규마다비 텐데서 로가츠 마가 주 가상은 제체네 까얀데르 마카안데르 니 최고 말해서 거라. 수르도 마셔와서. 와 규마다비 텐데치 요레스티 losu ke shago mar kanga pa ka shan dire se wara ma che war rishi gi nawa tamje ka ko ja de kona nyele cheba che su ta kang tawa changma pa ka sha go re sa tongba re sa tongba ran kom go re so se wara kyumengo bo shu du lu gyu shi ye ba te lu ne te nge je kyuma da bo me shin du chi na de ko de re tongba ni to sa na ko to de re se wara Simde che umare tambu pa kanga pa kashan dire che le de grese gora ayena delia shenda samlu tanji chana samlu na le gor ma to phige le ke yo mara tongban se chedan ro se samlu na kanga me samna me ra me cha gora samlu na me ba chana tawane me na ni cheda se de long ro yora ko samlu na che me na po ba je le de ni phe phe ba ro 수저 갖고 지게이네 되게 고야 더 요라 규명을 보셔도 레죠 예바시 되게 대해서 이거랑 예 되그래서 끝나서 세르당 봉하다 세르다 사토도다 싱다 지금 다음에 강가님도 보면다 하잖아 강가 책받에 책 맞은 게지 레 되그래서 거라 세르다 자한테도 책 말을 레 되그라 어디 나신 레스 거라 세르다 모아다 사도다 신소 개발 마치오르 지저도 밀라색야 지저도 파 메라다샤 식바 남네 마치바 남네 슈도 르바다르 인노세 실루두 공개레셔 루두 공개세 제제제 고랑 좀 열다 공개랍 근데 로마 저거서 파르게제 슈다체 셔저 어디나레 셔샤스오야
So then, with the above mentioned views in mind, the great scholar Gendon Chöpel, and Gendon Chöpel was someone who was alive in Tibet during Geshe-la's lifetime. And so his assertion in his ornament to the intent of Nagarjuna says that when one applies rational analysis, one does not need to set aside illusion-like dependent arisings, but must use the analysis to refute all appearances. So here he's saying that as for the sort of basis that one is analyzing, when you engage in analysis, you need to take everything and refute that. So this is opposed to Jelama Tsongkhapa and his spiritual sons, who assert that, well, when one is engaging in the sort of refutation of the object of negation, you're not refuting the mere thing or the thing itself. It's not as though you're refuting form or the person or whatever it may be, but rather that you're in identifying their inherent existence, that kind of existence from its own side, that autonomous, inherent, non-dependent existence. And it is then that which is being refuted, not their mere existence whatsoever. So here, this is the kind of understanding that other scholars have. But if, again, according to Jelama Tsongkhapa and so forth, one needs to distinguish between the kind of form as a mere form or the person and so forth, and the inherent existence of that thing. Being able to distinguish those and then refute that kind of inherent existence. If there were something that existed inherently, you would be able to find it within that analysis. But that unfindability establishes the non-existence of that kind of inherent existence. Whereas here, according to Gendon Chöpel, he says that when one applies rational analysis, you do not need to set aside illusion-like dependent arisings, not make those kind of distinctions, but rather use the analysis to refute all appearances. However, so when you are engaging in this kind of rational analysis, you should take everything that is appearing, and within that, you will come to its kind of non-existence. So, however, it is certain that some illusion-like thing will remain after the analysis. Again, asserting that we don't need to distinguish between the mere thing of form or person, the existence of which prasangikas are not negating or refuting, and its inherent existence, but rather that when one meditates on emptiness, engages in this kind of rational analysis, having taken everything, all appearances, that when one refutes that, something will be left over, as it says here. To give an analogy, when one burns a mixture of things such as gold, clods of earth, dirt, stone, and twigs, those things that are flammable will burn, but those things that are inflammable will remain. And so too, when you burn like a mix of things, for example, gold and stones and whatever, those things that are inflammable will survive that kind of fire, and those that aren't will burn up. And so too, when we engage in examination with this kind of rational analysis, one should take all appearances, and having sort of taken that and refuted them, what is left over are these sort of illusion-like appearances.
Oh, 다디가 소라. tambu cheba che ro ngara do kansa de ne so cheba che ta de kabando ta ne ragu marwa mara de ne ta de mendo sam de tongba komsha de ge ore se ora tina shi chu tamje ta ton che go re se do ge kabando yo na ka ge ta ngone jin zo zo sa me na me bre sam se ora me ba sha ora 전다지 루루 전에 당에다 지나되거든 군주기 나와래서 이거 고치고 말아 군주도 예배 여고 치고 말해서 군주도 예배 여고 치고 말때 좀마다 그래서 어떤데 꼼나 좋아 근데 마고 비자 다가서 동발에 삼kom나 마디를 송도 이 롱제람 잡아 용기도 하시나요 다들 쟤네니 아까임도 삼대 동바kom나 되그래서 이면에 남가타야 남시타야 지하메 시지 치료받은 남번이가 꿈에 열와 동번이 마도 오셨다가서야 꿈에 남가타야 되게 그 속제 강가 견도 때네 남간에 동사장 꿈대 열아 근데 그 수다설에 현자대 잠깐부터 순간부터 강가 견전도 돈이 띵념 반도 열어 내가 그런가 남가타야 지하메에서도 다 칠로를 마대베체 남가타야 남시타야서 셈장장 남가 셈장장 마도 칠로 또 강가 매베체 꿈거라 이 남가 남시 지하메에서도 다 지하메에서 동바코나 검사교라 두시면서 두시 열마이럽체 시시도스 tindir에 저게 녀몽은 요에 넣어줘야 오마오면 녀몽은 요한테 내가 매겨 차거라 싸워내 방게 오마르마 어디인데 디나식 범샤나 아서래 따든지 그래서 담에도 좀 동바코랑 검사나 신사 총으로라 이제 다야 통되어 어디 좀마다 그래도 왔지 현다 초원데 지지된 디지레시레시데 임베서로시 좀마다 그전 러시아에서 와라 근데레 삼트데 꿈나섬을 팽기 와라 어딘데 제나 아니 가서 그래 동반이 검사나 당신들 착다된 요로 그래서 와라 이 마셔베 제제 단단하시 수가교 말을 자가교 말을 다가교 말을 세어네 다 여러 남유나시라서 거라 남유나시 때도 라문에 주요 말을 세마도 남유네 이도와 뭐 라도 강가 때도 와서 이 녀모전에 때야 저 때용으로 와서 거라 어떻게 말해서 남유 땅에 돼 제종가부터 전에 남유 계에 돼 라문에 주베 예도와다 예도명와다 자다니다 나서 지삼바 되게 얼마도 다시 고통을 되게 너무 되게 말이셔라 되게 얘네 자좀 받아서게 자좀 차네 고수 자티로 속부터 통으로 갈라서 그래 자좀 봐 아니 파스 로레지 통되고 와서 கொஞ்சம் 너무 깨보라 지금은 도와셔라 자고 통화 점점 너무 되게 말이셔라 라문에 매에서도 달러 딱 받삼시 통고요라 뒤지도 너무 되게 말이셔 그런 통화 점점 너무 되게 라문에 여봐 이 다르버시네 고 랑운에 dra인 바다 나서 랑운도 주베시 여봐 되게 신자기를 마도 나 때네 딱 받삼지레샤 삼네 근데 신자 숙심 되게 말와 아버다 마다스야 뒤질람네 야
So here, when one searches for like the self of the person, when you're sort of like according to again this sort of system, if there's nothing to point to, if there's no sort of self, you realize it's non-existence. And for them, the sort of mere conventional appearances, merely existing due to worldly renown and so forth, that doesn't suffice for existence. That is not sufficient for existence. And this is different from the view of Gelama Tsongkhapa. But so to take everything that appears and refute or negate that, this then is like, what makes that different from the kind of meditations of the form and the formless realms, wherein one has refuted the sort of mere appearances of things, and by doing so are able to attain, are sort of able to get rid of those more gross manifest afflictions and attain, like for example, the state of limitless sky or nothingness. nothingness, where you just have the sort of mind. There's no external appearances or that state of non-perception and so forth. Those higher levels of meditative concentrations are attained through like sort of negating when you don't see that external object, or when you are not perceiving those particular objects. They're temporarily able to get rid of those kinds of, again, manifest sort of afflictions that arise from engaging with various objects. And so here one needs to contemplate how it is that things are sort of like illusions. And according to some, that's the sense in which they have no existent basis whatsoever. And we can see how the kind of contemplations wherein one isn't engaging with those various objects can lead to higher levels of meditative concentration. But we also, and we can't just leave our sort of perceptions as they are. If we just allow our minds to remain engaging the way that we are, we can clearly see that that creates certain problems. So here, though, scholars like Lama Tsongkhapa would say that it's not just the mere seeing of something, but it's that seeing it as being truly existent, as being really existent like that, that we then give rise to the kind of clinging and all of our various afflictions. If it were the case that the mere seeing of things created afflictions, then like arhats, for example, they have to eat still, they have to engage with various objects, but they are able to recognize that they're merely dependent originations as opposed to being truly existent in that way. So here, again, the idea is that there's a difference between just sort of negating, refuting everything, and refuting the particular kind of grasping at that or its true existence.
Oh, yeah. Ore, condition base you are Nazu Lesalia, Lamar, which is Nazuki Gaiba. Konda Shusa, Kambar of China, sharp parts, Tanya Buchidua. Oh, Tilia, Kuma, Kevashimbo, you are there. Can't Tanjamba Segre, Tanjamba Chirubara, Chiruba Mingtan, Tanjamba develop Keva Redoko, can't Tanjamba says you are there. The competitor Yongis. Gudo Angazu Kangasona. You'll call Lambri Ladon Chimutri order. Yanted Chimachishin. It's on Gaba Shiva Nashi Chimachishin pay a wood triggers on the order. There's a theatre. Yatangeba Satelia. Tako look what you not in a shinty to we order. Nimachi unit in a shinty to we order. So Pejashuna Karina in a shinty to order. Yama. You don't get your Tasha, they come back to the Tegor, Jama. Telia and then Dawson was a new make a Mambuchi, in the British chair. British do any Tagako, the Casolutu Congense, who share Shabakanga, so Shindiche Shacha, and the party of Kurante to shape Pechira. And the cat Tanjamba said, Tanjang devil cover, condition be Tagandro, Sanskrit Institute of Lobcho. Tanjang do Chiru Tanjambarat in Dobape Kebaro, Kebajude. It's a Mampado and the Ken Tanjamba said the Lum the Compe, Tanjang Doba Kebachadwa, Minkor and Ken Tanjamba Segdo. In John Gunju said, Semanam Drigget Tamja Shasachores, Sinde Kanga Sochayan Chasach. Yet Tamja Shas Wakora. Yet Tanjamba. And this and that I said Tangezuke. A transjambal, three transjambal, the water tangent, Kago search at Ake transjambal, Remedoase, say was Samson. Tinit as a Lazan came as a transient, the Kanga Chuju Kanga, Chimachi, pay our share. As a trade, the session or something. Kosoma.
I shut up. I have a go to my son, Gonda did it. Young girl, don't it?
Oh, did it? Condition be or
No.
Maguna and the Martian did it. Condition be the Lesser, the such you are. Kangba, the Nazuki again, Kalama Buches, Nazuki again, but on dinner shoe you are. Tanya would when you pass a shot. Did this one?
Yeah.
And the code the Ken Transjambas, Command Tazanke. Koran kidu chiware, kindu chimbe kidu. Yete peche tiga yunguware, lamri tigaware, lagdong chimutozo. Te ken lama ke kon sengi yose samsa ko kandu chigdo tade. Pe chima chishin pe tabu yabu chigdo osore. Kin chigdowa. Oh, tiche. Tisa koran kindu chimbe kiluk bachi tene na kiluk daba na shin tigaware se. Tanda de nala. Lutu kongyen singe kindu chimbe peche shtuwa. Lutu kongyen le she do se soa. Lutu kongyen se de ya nyingme Eba kachi liya peche tivre. Chiti zane konzo sindi kyab. Kichima pari kyab shavare ese. Chitigidwa. Tati taga shere. Yen changjemba senge den jang kunju se namdi changjang toche jang kunju se sacha chure. Tili sende sumga trabakanga sema namdi taga dure. Sema namdi changjang dagre. O tili ken changjemba dige tamja shasu. Tamja shasu na ko len jabje shenda kanga ani tase tangirwa chwa tigira tanje kola tamje sha so digidwa
No.
tamje sha ne ne konjo ge tase tange to tanje ben de ba so tanje ba chiru tanje ben de ba ye ta ne da khabo sha na ne ta ke tanje ba se ming tanje ba tho ma da sing me do se go sa ba je ko len ya bu je ne tanje ge de ba pe ya bu ja so se nga zo ten nga thon ra nga zo ti she ya da This one.
Yeah, decent.
Rose Shannon did a Nenga Mara, Tagasinga, Tensa, Kadusha, the Captain Mara.
So here, there's a little bit of a story, and sorry, this is a bit challenging for me. So when Geshe La was in Tibet, he had a teacher named Gen Lama Rinpoche, and actually Gendon Chopel had a room close by and would sometimes receive teachings. He would also sort of give various teachings, and he was really skilled, incredibly skilled in being able to like teach Gelug texts just as Gelugs would teach them. And actually he taught this ornament of the intent of Nagarjuna to various Nyingma students who then compiled this and put this into a book. And so here he had a student who came to be known as Drang Chempa. So he taught to this student, and this student was quite skilled and so during the time when they would go and sort of study the pramana, in particular the treatise on valid cognition, he was very skilled in debate and managed to like uphold the Samkhya position, and so thereby was given this name of Trangchenpa, which means Samkhya, and he was like sort of like the only Samkhya that ever won a debate, really, like in this context. So this is just sort of a little bit of a side story related to Gendon Chopel, but this is something that happened during Geshe La's life.
Oh, yeah, this one. Oh, the Chimbe Kurante, Amdule, Lochoche, they are your Jebu, Lu Combarwa, Jebu Kumatra, the Lochoche. Oh, the Dekavache, yeah.
So Gendon Chopel was from Amdo. He originally began his studies in Amdo and then came to the Gomang College there.
Oh, yeah, that did it.
At Draper.
Tanga to the so. Chonamba Chimbu Shirap Jenji, Chonamba, Kunji Chonamba, Chimbu Chonda, Chonas Chuju Logachi Vara, Namba. Chonamba Chimbu Shirap Jenji, Tendi Yenase, Duje Dan, Jumba Louis Chuda, Tomba Yengus, Tendi Yena Duje Yengur, and Dumache to Zuli Tendise or Mareson Gora, Duje Dan, Jumba Yengure. Tendesne Jumba Sigure, the Mambuji saw and see Shama, the one met him, Tendesi, Jumba Rese, Louis Chujan, Louis Chujan, Temba Marico. Randon Yikolas, Tende Chutuzukanga, Umbakawa, Suda, Tala, Sobatazukanga, and it is Randore, Yomare, Tomba, Round Tombare, Tombani Shedus at that, and them Shedus are Condu Randore, Mevere, again the Chibarisra, Sheila Mavis, Randore is somewhere. A new car showed them, Randon Yikolas, 주니 동반이네 밀로에 아 동반이세데 밀로아레 송고라 밀로에 템바임베세 셴도레 동반이데 셴다 군주베 쳬게 동바레 마도 코라 동그마레 코라 템바 드로베세 야보 템부 축뚝도 템바 드로베세 요고레 송고라 그래서 아 인지스 랑동 마인세 코랑동 마레 동반이세 왔다 동반이데 랑도레소나 그 군주도도 야 랑도레 마레고 전담라 때에 군주도도 랑도레 두고라 전담 거라 또선다 이제 군주도도 랑도레 마레야 여버라 차자고야 챈도레 나 지레 고르마 이 구주시도와 거기 매미시 랑도 마이라 텐데야 마이버르 송셰 텐데 마레스티 가가 텐데세 망버지 소니 지나데 지레테 텐데 군주도도 텐데세레세 초르마도디 전담데 텐데 마레 송거라 텐데는 뒤셔 인고레스 오야 티셔나 텐데 텐다데 데라 군주도도 가가 랑도네 코라요 마레 전담을 제베세 전담데 랑도 마레 셴도레 군주 셴제 동베 마도 코라 동교요 마레 코라 속도 랑와도 두바 템바두바 시샤고요 아래 이마샤나 동니 코라데 랑도레서는 군주베 쇼도도 랑도레고야 요 마라 아주 통하시여 줘라 그래서 야 그디실람네
So then turning to the next kind of different view, this is that of the Jonang master Dolpopa Sherab Gyaltsen. And so there's, again, many different kinds of assertions. And here, the scholars of the Jonangpas would say that dependent arisings must be compounded, deceptive, and false phenomena that are self-empty. They don't exist. So here, according to this view, dependent arisings are false. They are mistaken and deceptive. So everything that appears to us, pictures and pillars and so forth, all of the various phenomena that appear are self-empty, as in they don't have any kind of basis in reality. They are deceptive and false. Whereas the sphere of reality, emptiness, is non-deceptive and true. Therefore, it is the ultimate truth and other empty. So here, emptiness then is this kind of reality that is non-deceptive. It is something that is solid and stable and real. And so therefore, it's not self-empty, and nor is it a dependent arising. According to this school, then, in other words, for Dolpopa, there is only ultimate truth, and the only thing it is empty of is everything that is other than ultimate truth. So here, for these scholars, they would say that emptiness, being this kind of ultimate reality, is not empty of itself, but is rather empty of everything that are these conventional false phenomena. Whereas that thing itself is true and real. If it were empty of itself, then everything would sort of collapse. There would be no false conventionalities. And so rather, this emptiness, this ultimate truth, exists from its own side. It exists solidly and really and truly. And therefore, it is empty of things that are other than that. This then is where we get the kind of self-empty and other empty. So for Dolpopa, there is only ultimate truth, and the only thing it is empty of is everything other than that ultimate truth. It is existent from its own side, and it is empty of all of those kinds of conventional false appearances. And conventionalities are self-empty because they don't have any sort of basis in reality.
Oh yeah. Benji shagya chonde ke gas. Benji shagya chonde shwede. Ira sagya ke basibira. Tuni treba tamja da jawa. 인베 동반이 시리즈는 트레바 탐제요 막 군주 배치 탐제다 트레바시라 트레바시리 군주 배치도 저래 트레바시그리 단딜리 군주 배치를 트레바시는 저거라 삼삼 템바트벌레 트레바시 템바트 단딜 동이 트레바 탐제다 트레와 인베에서 동이 텐제 인바게에서 동이 텐제 마레서 그래 동가 보다 저네 초 탐제 텐제 샤그라 Geshe Thabkhe Duma Chale Sayora. This national Wiwa. Concept Tiju Maimbe Chunga Yoba Maimba, Tichi Tomba Maimbe Chunga Yoba minus Sayora. Teletene Tenji Maimbe Chu Mason do, doesn't Tisha. Geshe Thabkhe Duma Thabkhe Niga Shacha Yora. And the Chel Madom Mesara. Lovis Shadus. Tony Trevor Tamjeta Trevor Yembe. Tony Tende Yemba Geshe, Tony Tende Mares, Tende in a nit, but make it sound to and the Turba Madrube Shege to Song Bese. And the Turba the Madrube Shege. Tomba in the Tende said, Tende in a Tomba Res, Titu Guarasera. And the Turba the Meveton down over this. Tension Deborah in a Yogo Mares, Tension Deborah said, the Meveton down over this. And the Turba Madrube, Koran took you in a Koran Rangunechi to Guru, and there is Koran Gunechi, Koran Gunete Omara. Shandal tensi balo chita sarati tendede ngune kora ngune de marisungora enje teba madrube sheche to songbese tenje debar joaga tene tongbange de sheya songu to ase tenje debar joase de penje teba de segrese tenje debar tene tongba de o marisungu to ase sheche to songbe tenjonge kewa so yoba keso yobe sheche to merose Tension Deborah Joy, Kiwa Yubechina, Kiwa Yor and Gagba Yor, or Tende Sheba to take my race of Gora. Tension Kiwa so Yuba, the Keso Yube Shechido. Keso Yube Shechido Mirisera, or Kiwa so you, the Tension Deborah Joy in Betches and Tending Mare. Chesonga bought the Tuzunet tended to catch him with Chiche. Tenji Deborah in a round to be Tomba in Guru Sanjay, Tenji Deborah somebody, pay attention to my bachi in Songora, or Tende Mare Songora. Kange Shana Shala turn a Yobata. Kunzu to Yebe, Yoko Mechuse, Shala turn a years, Tenji Deborah used the Koran Mavache, Shandachi on the Tawas Ming Tasha gets to the Chaviore. Kange Shana Shala turn a Yobata, Kunzu to Yebe, Yoko Mechubes. The days Kebandua. Kunzup the Yebe Yogo Chumari, Chesonga Batazina, Kunzup the Yona Yogo Chugura. Tandamba Mebe Mego Chugumare. And this in a Tandamba Mebe Mego Chugure. Kunzup the Yebe Yogo Chugumar, Chesonjo Medrandua. Kete Lende so tende Kunzuba Nam Yonase, Lende so tende Kunzuba to Yeva Inase, that Kumatabu Sigma Rese. Mention to now at the Kumasegorese. The lander so tender Kunzubecho to the Yona, Kumata Bregma Resongore, to matter. Yoba Maya now at the Kumeta to Jacobayas, Yoma, the man and now the Kumasigore. Chotamji Kumata we set Teresa. Kunzumna Yona Kunjin Miguale, Kunjin to them make it tele Shembe Kunzum Tela Menawe, Sanjake, Dam Casture. La Chebana, Kunzu Becho to the Sigma Rese, Tombanya Sigma Mado. Yona Tene Kunzu Becho to the Yona, Kunjinji Mikubale, Kunjinji, Tondam Mamiki, Tele Shembe, Tondam Miki, Tele Shembe, Kunzu Menaves, Te Kunzu Tende Masix. Tenagashi, it was Tenagashi. Kunjinji Tende Kembe, they Kemban Damedo Sheba, they Chesonga Batuzu Songora. Tende Songbe, Tabate Tabalana Meba. Tende the Songbe, Song the Songlana Meba. The Chiribal Mebe, Tende Style as the Sheswa. Oh, Tende Medo Songora. Tenangashi is Kebangashi Songora, Chesonga Baso. Kunjinji Tende Kembate. Kemban Damedo Sheba. Tende Kembe Kebalana Mebase, or Tende Tembalana Mebase, Sheba Tendimas. Tena Yeba, Ranshingi Yeba like Keber Mess. Yona Rangune Yogode. Ranguni Mana Mevasha with us, the Kunzubechu kind of Rangune Yomare. Say Yangune Yona Chen near Yogode, near Meduas. The Meba, the Ranshingi Mebala, Keber Jeva Mirik Barsto sauce. 여바다 랑군에 여바든지 매바다 랑군에 매바든지 제종가 바다 저 시즈잖아 여바다 랑군에 여바든지 말해 ngoma ngobo tendu ma to sama ge yona rangune yo korese konzo chena yobada rangune yobate jire mebada rangune mebate jire dele ngatu ne nambana shi chena chizonga bana shi shiba chena ibo mare yona rangune yo kumare wa rangune meja me kumare rangune me uchu mare o ti chebandwa na yobada rangshigi yobala kebar mes mebada rangshigi mebala ya kebar jeba mirik bar sung soose o de ya dingi keba yoshe lauri laudon chemuta tuzuni ya trugirwa yobada rangwini yobala kebar mebada ngoma wente sures mebada rangwini mena me kwade ngoma wente sures yesonze konjo kaga rangwini yose kwe chungres chungyora o di chilamna
So then the great scholar Shakya Chokden maintains that to say emptiness is a dependent arising is contradictory because emptiness is free of all elaborations. So here, this kind of his assertion is that to say emptiness is dependent arising is contradictory because emptiness is free of all elaborations. And so here we see that sometimes elaborations are seen to be referring to like conventionalities as in this case, whereas in other contexts we say that free of elaborations is referring to that kind of appearance of true existence. But here it's the sense that emptiness is free of all of those conventionalities. And so therefore, he says also, he also says that mutual dependence is a proof that something does not exist. So for things to exist in this kind of mutual dependence, or in a way that is such that they are dependent upon other things, as dependent arisings, that is therefore proof that something doesn't really exist. And so here, therefore, he maintains that dependently arisen production and the like do not prove the existence of production and so forth. How is this so? Contingent existence and conventional existence are not capable of establishing the existence of anything. So for this particular school, the scholars like Shakya Chokden would say that that which is dependently originated is not established. It is merely sort of designated. It's merely conventionally existent. And that conventional or contingent existence is not sufficient for existence. It is only sufficient to talk about existence for things that exist from their own side. So when you have contingent or conventional existence, that's not actually sufficing sort of for existence. So when it says then that if dependently arisen conventionalities, such as karma and its effects, existed, they would not be illusion-like. For the meaning of illusion-like is that something that does not exist nevertheless appears. So here again, there's a different kind of understanding of the way that this term illusion-like is applied. For them, they are understanding this as phenomena are illusion-like in the sense that they don't actually exist, but nevertheless appear. And so they continue saying, if conventionalities existed, they would be the object of a Buddha's omniscience. But ultimate existence is the object of a Buddha's omniscience, and conventionalities never appear to it. So here, this is a very different assertion than others like Gelama Tsongkhapa, wherein here it says that for a Buddha, conventionalities don't appear. A Buddha's omniscience, or its ultimate existence, they would say, is the kind of object of a Buddha's omniscience, but not conventionalities. And so therefore, because a Buddha does not see dependently arisen conventionalities, when some scholars explain as being when some scholars explain the knowledge of dependent arising by means of omniscience as being a pureless knowledge, they are incorrect. So here, like Lama Tsongkhapa, who praises the Buddha for his seeing of dependent origination and for his speaking and teaching of dependent origination, they would say that that is incorrect to praise the Buddha for that as being pureless knowledge, because really those conventionalities, dependent originations, do not appear to a Buddha's omniscience. Only the ultimately really truly existent is what a Buddha sees. And so for a Buddha to praise a Buddha for his knowledge of dependent arising is incorrect, they would say. That's a strange reason to praise him, because the Buddha doesn't even see these various conventionalities. And so for these schools, for those that espouse these views, there is no distinction between existence and inherent existence. And it is also unsuitable to distinguish non-existence from non-inherent existence, as do Tsongkhapa and their followers. So for them, the kind of existence and inherent existence are synonymous, whereas for Tsongkhapa and his followers, those are definitely not synonymous. And likewise for those of these views, non-existence and non-inherent existence are the same. So if you negate inherent existence, you are establishing things as being non-existent. But for Tsongkhapa and his followers, it's not the case that something needs to be inherently existent to be existent. There is a distinction between those two made.
Oh yeah. tenjungi kiawa ngwe yimba ase shegora. Tanda ta dozu tenjin rebar juwe kiawa di kiawa ngone re maswa. Ko mangbu je so ne kiawa sata ba ma do kiawa ngone yine korang ngone su kiawa je kore ti yo ma re se. No swa. Ande je zonga ba so shi chu tera. Tenjungi kiawa de kiawa ngone re se ngaba de ngaba ngone re se. Tenjungi kiawa sha gore tenjin rebar juwe kansa de kansa sha gore se tenjin rebar juwe ma do Shikanya Yomaris Kanga Tension Debarjuades and Guara. So Jetanya Sheba Namla, Tinjungi Mubi Kewaso Nawa, Yeshes Roy Kewadan Gabadan Roadan Wada, Tetsuama Nangiranga to Tondigadoa, on the Sama Sugura. So Jetanya Sheba Namla, Tinjungi Mubi Kewaso Nawa, Yeshes Kewakawa and Draw Walaso. The Darnawa, the Trunam Bashi. Maimbar, that now at now and Shinde Teo Marco, now and Mebatin de Nante or around when it to announce that Dio Mara, now and Shintukumara, now a Tartu to Guiomare. In a Tunam Bashimare, Kanga Su now at Yomare, Su Rangwini to now at Yomare to the Marese, Tunam Bashimare, and the Tamach and the Tati Tunache, Mebetran Rosa, that under the Yebetran to Yora. Sotala soba kunju bechotu sigida. Teta nawa de chunam bashi mayin bar ngwebo namla rangi chawa che nebe kewa ngone bashi kya yeba che tsonga baso ki sheba yela. Tene tenye deri che tsonga baso lamri ladon chemula shi che de tior chawo se. O te korte lamri ladon chemuna song sha se. Tina shi tiki yin se. Ta tina la che rambuchi songba re ne tiyo mara. Tina kung chang ege. Tashitan, Dawa Trapata, Bulututa, Tezuku Kuntane, so she belonged to Devara, what is and the question Sheviwa. What is Lana?
So then we turn to the next section, which says dependently arisen production is actual production. And so here, the views above were those that said that this dependently arisen production is not actual production. This is something that is merely designated as such, but really things aren't produced. Things don't actually cease. They are illusion-like in the sense of almost being totally non-existent. But here, according to Lama Tsongkhapa and his spiritual children, it's the view is different. So production and so forth of dependently arisen composite things appears to the conventional consciousnesses of ordinary beings. So, production and so forth, dependently arisen composite phenomena appear to ordinary beings. And although, as Jela Tsongkhapa and others assert that while such appearances are mistaken, composite things have actual production and each thing is able to perform its functions. So, although it is the case that ordinary beings are mistaken with respect to the way that things appear, it's not as though they're merely mistaken, or only exist to a mistaken kind of perspective, but rather these things appear to the consciousnesses of ordinary sentient beings, and they're able to perform functions and so forth. Thereby, they have actual production. So, drawing on Tsongkhapa's teachings in the Insight section of the Great Treatise on the Stages of the Path to Enlightenment, I will further clarify the meaning of this assertion. So here, this, as it appears in Gelama Tsongkhapa's Great Treatise on the Stages of the Path to Enlightenment, we're going to not go through quoting that text, but actually looking at the kind of sources upon which he draws in order to make this assertion that phenomena do exist. Dependently arisen production is actual production. These things appear, and are not merely mistaken appearances, but don't exist in the way that they appear.
Oh yeah. But they are Thomas Dogovanes and Dochich Tanguchiora. Do they did lot of seminal Yokemara? So Geshe Bala, Kiwaso nowadays, Sheila Zawane Meba Sheila, Kiwaso now a Tunambashi Maese. Adeliati Tunambashi Songorati Tunambashi Maresera. The Donald didn't do Serra. Nabashi Maese. Oh, Nika. Tunambashi Maese. Tunambashi Maese. Netadana ya Simjanamji. Tunambashi Maese. Tusuranga. Are to Tadare. Tunambashi Maese. Tadana ya Simjanamji. Simjanamji. Shebara, Kewaso, Kunzube, Sheka, Nawana, Yurangwine, Truba, Nawata. Tunambashi de Marete, Yina, Nawate Tulde, or Esera. Tunambashi Mares. Truba Kanjamadutina, Yobachi, Maggot in the Mares at Narwa. Trutriviora, Nawa, Samatam Jede, Rangwine, Truba Nagiora. Trying Rangwine, Tryber, so Semgipa, Tenepa, Tavasa, Maibers. You don't want to do you Kurangwine to Rangwine, you don't want to. Rangwine, you don't want to tone, Mikange, you don't want to Kange, you don't want to over it, Tungo Mara. Tadi Rangwine, trying by Tungo, some try Tungo and Titungmara, so Semgipa, Tatan Chida, Tigichawa Chida, Chilitan, Tatan Kabaduyora. Rangwine Truba now at it Tunare. Tawane Mabachires, no Mare, Tinalia, Su now, Kansa Nawasana. Meva Mara, Kansa de Yore, Kansa de Rangwine Trubat, now Nashi Mares, Tunambashi Mares, now Nashia Yomara. That at the Tamar Songetsu Chena, Tuna Maina, one now Nashi, Tuna Maina, and the Tondevanam, you told them the years ago, Rasangora. Namjiton Nashi Yona, and the Kondung I get out of the Tal Sheba, Kangachi Vase. What in now I take me now at the try and get me to Tonga, take a young country Marta, the nation that can go country King Marwa. Chigichala, Regina, Kansa in the Yeton Washington, take a Yeton Shibaton, the Shanda can get the nation Tonga Marwa. Because Tonga de Chipu Maresera, you're wrong when you were Tonga de Kigores. The man tried to but to go and then so that the Rexalas over Yamopansana Tongira. Kansa Kora Yora, Kora Pumbunga Yore. The Sutative Rechalos over Lonchegra. Yamojigo Maraco. The Caras Rangwine Truba Tungo Marta, Tombanitone. Then a Tapasamato Rangwine Truba Timete. The Chichigora Saya de Saur Mother Saura, Trachumba, Lacha Trachumba Saura, Calasagiora. Caladis Sagio Marining Body Sigre, Maning Body Sashan Kayo Marasimara. Yaha into a size of whatsoever and done. It's always a Rachum said, Yamu Pansara, Tenzin Pansara. Console Chiton, do what is Tigua. The Coton someday, you might give a Chuchigi or Marese. You might give a Judy Ramwine to her. All the chuck by the current Nas around I want sympathy. Nas said the Pumbula attended about some Resha, some not, some J. I get some Buddha today or some Arwa. Oh, this is what I so Simjanam Jikawa so Kunzu Khan now. Rangwine Trubar Nawata. Mobo Khan, Rangi, Juda Ken, Jujeda, Rangi Chashela Tony Trubation. Mobo Kandeshina, Juda Ken Sopola Tene Trubura. Rangi Chashe, the Dashilet and the part of what's up to go. It is to Rangwine Truba Mera. Rangwine Truba Yana, Juda Ken Giwangi Rame Batsu, Ye de Umaro, Cocorantania Toya Besorish Kugara. Rangwine Koran, Rangwine Kita to Marwa. Judan Kin Sauce New Resident Burisa, Judan King get on the way I catch you. But the Cocoran thing Arazu 30 to Sawan, and you won't the Corantania Toyo Besores Tonguda. Corantania Toneke Oma, Corajan Tongi Omara. Judan King, ya. Sauce Naco, Ram Magoche Tongiora, in the till around the Trubachi, Yoma Richera. Shengdora Shinero. The Pata does a yaga, the Lomada Tezukangal at Tenepa, the Shengdores Patagua. Then a Tagador Mato, Shengdo Ibachi, Jiris, Chicken Zooks to a mera. I went to a mera. O T. Cavachi Sundua. Mobo Kanye Rani, Jujinda, Rangi Chashela Tune Truba Yin. Rani Ranzing Musum Sola, Nawana, the Darmenawarse. Ranjingu sum sola now and at ten at what some race samsa for Rawameba Kokewares and Rameva Gabares to the Nangima Resera. Ramune Kewa Dangabis or Nangi or Reser Tonde. Menawa Rawangi Truba now Yimbe. Sheba Tenamnet that Nave Shan Nangula Truba, Nangula Truba Reser. Kunzube you Tonge Sheba to Tamarova. Oh, Nangula Truba Reser. Same things over Ramato. I get it this year. Oh, you are teaching them now.
So, here, then turning to what is taught in the sutras, again, this appearance of production, cessation, and so forth to an ordinary person's consciousness is not an erroneous appearance of something that is completely non-existent. So again, above we had these appearances as being merely erroneous kinds of appearances, that they have no sort of basis in reality. It's not the case that there's some sort of just a merely erroneous appearance of something that is completely non-existent. However, whenever any conventional phenomena, such as production, appears to a living being's consciousness, it appears to be established not as dependently arisen, but from its own side. So here, it's not the case that there's a merely just solely erroneous appearances, but it's the case that phenomena appear to us to be established from their own side, not as dependent originations. Although all composite things are established in dependence on their causes and conditions and their parts, they do not appear in this way to a direct perception. Rather, they appear to be established independently. So here it's the case that it's not merely erroneous appearances, but rather there is that part of the appearance that seems to be truly, really existent. And this is what we are mistaken with respect to. So we have, when phenomena appear to us, like when an enemy appears to us, it's like, oh, that's my enemy from their own side. They just exist in that way. Or this is something that is attractive from its own side, as if it weren't dependent upon causes and conditions, or upon its sort of the parts and the whole, or upon our mentally labeling, mentally designating that as being our enemy or our friend. If it were the case that phenomena had that kind of existence from their own side, then something that is an enemy would be an enemy to everybody. Something that is attractive would have to be attractive to everyone. But it's not the case. We can see that this is not the case. So here, it's not the person's very existence that is being negated, or phenomenon's very existence, but rather the way that it appears as though they were sort of independent, autonomous, without depending upon anything else. And so if it were the case that say phenomena themselves, the mere appearances of things, were all just mistaken appearances, then how would it be that someone who has gotten rid of like all of their afflictions, someone like an arhat, would experience these various objects? It's the case that things, phenomena appear to them. They see various forms and hear sounds and taste things and so forth, even though they have gotten rid of the kind of root of samsara. They no longer give rise to afflictions in relation to those objects, but they enjoy various objects. They engage with various things. So here, this sort of distinction is being made between a kind of mere existence of something and its being existent in the way that it appears, as though it had this kind of independent, autonomous existence without being dependent upon anything else. And so here we think like, oh, that thing is a tree from its own side. It's just, that's a tree. I could, as though there was something that we could just point to. But when we really search, we see that it's something that is merely designated upon a various collection of parts, the trunk and the branches and the leaves and so forth. And when we really search for that kind of thing in and of itself, we can't actually find it. So here they are, phenomena are empty of appearing or of existing in the way that they appear. So due to the independent way objects appear to such cognitions, these appearances are mistaken, but just the things themselves are not just erroneous or mistaken. So here, this will be proceeded below.
Oh yeah. 어때더래요? 돌레데 더송 데스 도 롱장겨라. 유튜브에 시 마치나세. 유튜브에 시지매나 아니 트나데 컨디션 용겨레스야. 좀 된될 쇼도. 유튜브에 시 마치나 유튜브로 나와 시저가 지달라스. 시지매나 아니 트브 나에다 나서다 나겐데 두케매나 가르 트브 나와데 가르션 용겨레스야. 실리지에 매나니 때 용고 되게 오마라 까제바스 레손데 최규마 신세 타니에 잠도 나신세 최담 규마다부로와 타니에 잠도 나신세 되바 여바데세 타니에도 여바세야데 셈트베 나와네 미송게세 타니에도 여바데 와 이 셈트베 나와레세 티 요마레세 요마레송게도 심트베 나와니 미송게세 인생기와 말해서거라 최대다 랑시 껴매바 마시네 딱바 틸수도 송에 주베 나와라 심트베 유도 나와서 주세대 가르스나 최대다 랑시 껴와요 말은 가고요 말해서 매나 나라저 통도자 랑외네 껴와 랑외네 가봐 랑외네 가이바 랑외네 따이바 인데 통고요 어디 통해야 랑군의 주바통한테 주바래서 와라. 최대다 랑시 겨매고 마시네 딱바 틸수도 소에 주베 나와라 셈 주베 유즈나와 송시에세 제다스 딱바 틸수세데 딱바 나와다 틸수도 나와세데 이 랑군의 깜들 랑군의 주바 나와들이야. 랑군의 주바 당부대 여바도 나와들라 딱바세 틸수데 마오바나 용게도 줄래 지당전에 딱바세네 나마테 단다 마지바 예버들 딱 마시그라 키수스네 단다 예버데 마오바데 땡게 들이야 키수스게 와라 이나 갑갈이야 랑원에 주발라야 딱 마시게 와라 딱타 쳇다세 쇼도 송시에세 이워데 마시오데 제다 야한테니래 잠벤도나 최기랑신 끼와메바 마시네 최남라 딱바 틸수도 송에 코아르줄라 제자데 최남라 랑시 껴매바데 마시네 최남라트네 딱바다 라와도 주베 시거다 딱바다 틸수도 소에 코아코라데세 최남 나와라 셈트베 나와 셰차오세 딱바 틸수도 랑군에 주베 ro rangune truba na watelia ene trube na wasiti trube rese Toma namga tabu mebales Toma namga tabu kage mebaselia SM truni achi tonde batinde marese shila chawane mebase mareso Toma namga tabu mebala sim trube tu chunam na wane mayino she sumbataros ote chindona
So then quoting from first the King of Concentration Sutra, it says, how can one say that an object appears mistakenly when the mind has no basis for it being mistaken? So here, if it were the case that there's no sort of basis whatsoever, then how is it that we have these kinds of mistaken appearances? And so here it continues that the sort of question that has been posed is answered as follows. It is as follows. Do not think that phenomena existing and appearing as mere illusion-like conventions is an appearance to an erroneous mind. Rather, understand that the mistaken appearance of phenomena as permanent and enduring, without knowing their lack of inherent production, is how the object appears to a mistaken mind. So here, identifying the sort of place of mistake, it isn't the case that we are mistaken with respect to the mere appearance of something, but rather the mistaken appearance is that kind of sense of phenomena as being permanent and enduring. So here, sometimes these two terms are used synonymously, although technically something permanent is referring to something that has not changed up until the present. And this sort of enduring has the sense of not changing again in the future. But this can also be referring to that kind of extreme of some kind of inherent existence from its own side. And so the mistaken appearance of phenomena as permanent and enduring is having that kind of autonomous existence without knowing their lack of inherent production is how the object appears to a mistaken mind. So it isn't the case that there's like a completely non-existent basis. But then in the same sutra, it continues, Manjushri, in short, by not knowing that phenomena lack inherent production and apprehending them as permanent and enduring, one passes through cyclic existence. This is how phenomena appear to a mistaken mind. Again, they appear as though they had this kind of existence from their own side, not dependent or contingent upon anything else. However, it is not the case that an erroneous mind it causes phenomena to appear from an original state of non-existence that is like space. So it's not the case that there's a totally non-existent basis and mere false appearances that arise, but rather the mistaken part of the mind is that which grasps or apprehends phenomena as being permanent or enduring, having some kind of autonomous, independent existence. Oh, I think Geshe-la is saying that we're going to be stopping there for today as the time is up.
That's also after
Awesome.
Tutuche Ginla, and Katrina, thank you for your very clear translations. Just a reminder, next week there will not be a class due to being Losar. Geshe-la has other things to attend to at the Institute. So we'll finish with some dedications. May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path and all spiritual friends who practice it have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the three worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Oh, yeah.
Recording